thank you. So, well, welcome today to our 2023 Veterans Day event. I'm Pam Tennyson-Rent, so I'm Vice Chair of our board, Latimer Vets Church Preservation Society. We're a new board. We've only been in formation for 2 years, so it's quite new. So welcome to our first Veterans Day event here at the former Zion Lutheran Church in Harrington Army Airfield Regimental Chapel. Our link with veterans is that this building, once a World War II regimental chapel, was built in 1943, and it was multi-denominational, a place of spiritual comfort for some 2,500 military personnel and their families stationed at the Harrington Army Airfield. The chapel is like most 800 regimental series chapels, which was a new concept at the time, and it was designed to look like churches that dotted our countryside. These chapels were to serve all major religions, Protestant, Catholic, and Jewish. And as was proudly proclaimed in an article about the chapel that I found in the base newspaper, the Windy Post, this was dated April 1944. And it states, freedom of every person to worship God in his own way, everywhere in the world, and that was by Franklin D. Roosevelt, in his message to Congress, January 3, 1941. That is the American way of life, the correct way, where not only an individual's religious preference is followed, free from fear, but also at the Harrington Army Airfield Chapel, where the same house of worship is shared by all faiths. So, I found that was really kind of refreshing to see different faiths all, worshiping in commonalities together. Especially with all the divisions we're seeing today. So, as many of us know, this Harrington Army Airfield, which is about 3 miles from here, functioned primarily as a staging base for training and processing bombardment crews for overseas missions in World War II. Thus, a veterans program honoring veterans seems both fitting and appropriate at this historic building. And yes, we are truly historic, as we were just listed on the Kansas Register of Historic Places, and we're forwarding on to the National Register, so hopefully they will consider and truly decide to have us be registered on that one as well. So we're quite excited about that. So now, on to honoring our veterans. Veterans Day has no apostrophe. It is a day to recognize all veterans. I do want to discuss a few facts and perhaps my viewpoints about today's veterans, but first off, I want to recognize any veterans with us. We do have, first and foremost, I want to mention 2 veterans on our board. David Spiker, a veteran in the Army and still serving, and my husband, Ron Rent, a veteran in the Air Force and still serving. So please, if I could have all these veterans, anyone in our audience, stand, and if you would, I would like you to say your name and what branch you're serving in and anything else you'd like to say. So, can I have any veterans out here stand? Okay. Anybody, a veteran is somebody that has served in the past, is retired, at any time in your life, you're a veteran, right? So let's start at the front here.
Hearing aids, I don't understand what we're mostly saying.
That's okay, and I'm probably not speaking up.
Your name.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm Ken McKnight from Council Road. For 4 years in the Army, did that again for most of it in Fort Person, Georgia, and Atlanta for almost 3 years, and the last year, Fort Riley.
I want to say, which you'll probably neglect, he was one of the lawyers on the Malai case. He had to see that all witnesses on both sides got to the court, and he sat in the courtroom and lost faith in the newspapers because what happened in the courtroom wasn't what was reported. But anyway, he was an attorney in the Malai case.
After Lieutenant Catlett was convicted, they consolidated the rest of the cases to Fort Person in Atlanta because of the aircraft capacity there. Witnesses and defendants were all over the world at that point. So they froze all of us in case was taken care of, they needed to downsize the office because they had brought in new officers, new prosecutors, and defense counsels. I volunteered to come to Fort Riley, Kansas, and not too many people volunteered to come to Fort Riley, so they took me up on my offer, and so threw me back in the briar patch, and I knew that it comes to grow to Fort Riley from a lot of care.
Yeah, it's a great place. Yeah,
Here today, if it hadn't been that he was frozen there, because he was been on the front lines in the energy. So, he was alive.
Jim Barber, 3 years Army, Vietnam veteran.
Dave?
David Spiker, 22 years in the Army, and currently retired and still working at Fort Riley for the government.
Anybody else? Okay, I'll talk for my husband. I could not, I can't say I could not get him to come today. He brought cattle to market today to be sold, but he's quite busy. He is still working. Well, he's active duty off and on. He's a senior master sergeant, chief at Forbes Airfield, and he is in the Air Force, obviously. So he's really busy working a job full time and Air National Guard as well. So he works 1 week a month, and then he also is quite busy with a cattle operation. So he works all the time, and when he can take care of things at home, he does it. And this was one of those days, so got to give him the grace to do that, right? So, yep. So anyway.
Pam,
Yes.
we got one more veteran in here.
Do we? Oh, okay, awesome. Well, this is perfect timing. All right. We'll be like, what is going on? Maybe Cheryl will give you the heads up. Okay, I was a little nervous at first, so this helps me to give you a little more time and smaller audience. Okay, we are having all of our veterans raise up, stand up, and announce themselves. Are you a veteran, by chance?
Yes, I am.
Awesome. Can you tell us your name and your branch of?
I was in the United States Navy for 3 years in Vietnam, and I was ordered from the start.
Awesome. Thank you to all. So, beyond the thank you for your service, there are ways we can express our appreciation to veterans and their sacrifices. And some things I think of, and this varies for everybody, but support veterans and their families during active duty, and that includes a spouse as well when they're at home. I can express these from my experience. Watching a child when the spouse needs grocery shop during the active duty, offer rides to the child, to the child extracurricular activities so the parent can get a break if they need a ride to 4-H or something. And it always seems that during deployment, the timing can be bad. Your child gets sick, hospitalized, your parents get sick or hospitalized, or there's a storm and there's damage, or there's a car accident, you name it. It just seems to happen during the deployment. And I personally do remember being 8 months pregnant with our son in 2007 as that big ice storm happened. Literally, as he's rolling off the tarmac at Forbes, the ice storm is rolling in. And I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? But I was very lucky I did not lose power. But we had a huge stack of firewood beside the wood stove, and I was prepared, and everything went fine. So, but it was quite nerve-wracking because some people were out of power for months. So, making a point to teach our children and grandchildren to understand the sacrifices of veterans, including today's veterans, which it's different now than it was in the Vietnam days and World War II era days. Understanding today's veterans is kind of hard, I think, but also teaching the children and grandchildren how to support them. And I read in a newspaper article in my local newspaper that statistically 50% of veterans don't like to discuss what they did during their duty. However, they may discuss on their own time, so you don't really want to straight out ask, hey, so what did you do over there? What's it like? You don't really ask that. It's not the right thing to do. It may be painful or uncomfortable for them to discuss. So anyway, and then also, for those that are still serving, you're in active duty, there are things you cannot discuss. Okay, you have to keep it secret, you have to keep it quiet, it's classified information. So these things are also something to keep in mind as well. And it's difficult because you have to internalize it if you do want to talk about it. So something to keep in mind, especially with today's veterans that can be hard. So, and then today's battles are different than the old battles. They're not as obvious. There are small wars. It's just different. So, and then after their service, support during the veterans during difficulties. There's a lot of VA support programs and understanding the difficulties during the trials and tribulations. And like I briefly mentioned, the generational differences of veterans. Today's newer generation of veterans is much different than the older generation. There are a lot of veterans now that are military or National Guard members that go overseas in due time, which can be difficult because they're not in a solid air base where they have the community support of a small town of military people around them. They are interspersed into the general public who really doesn't understand what they're going through. They don't quite have that same support. And we don't have any massive world wars going on, which kind of is good, but they're more sporadic small wars. So the service time is less known or less understood. And I think our public is certainly more distracted by social media. Politics are dividing, and thus contributing perhaps to less support of today's veterans. So for today's generation of veterans, perhaps we need to work harder to understand them and support them, and educate our children and grandchildren to do the same. So we have a lot of veterans that have worshiped in this building throughout a long history. And this building's 80 years old. 78 years of worship have occurred here. So it's been a regimental chapel, it's been a Lutheran church as well, and we are grateful to all the veterans, including, I looked up our last Lutheran minister, Father King Robert. He served as a veteran for over 20 years in the Army. He was stationed in Korea for a time. He was a cook, facility manager, recruiter, counselor, and race relations NCO. And looking back again, many years ago, 70-some years ago, at the Harrington Air Force Base, the regimental chapel was guided by a lot of amazing, dedicated chaplains that we must acknowledge, of course. And these military chaplains are part of the U.S. Army Chaplain Corps, which has been around for, gosh, I think it's the 1700s they've been around, that Corps has been. And they serve, besides serving at as chapels on bases, they also serve alongside soldiers during battle continuously, which we've got some amazing stories to tell about, providing for their spiritual needs, working to improve their morale, and aiding to the wounded and dying on the battlefield, and at times burying them on the battlefield. And these chaplains demonstrated some tremendous bravery. Ray Kapaun, I'm going to have you now talk about one extremely special and brave veteran who's accomplished things that I cannot even ever fully express or explain. So that is, of course, Chaplain and Father Emma Kapaun. And I will hand it over to you to complete this program and talk about him. So appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, first I want to apologize up front, because I've been battling a cold for the last week, and I was in Missouri all last week. I gave about 5 speeches, and my voice by Friday night, I didn't even have a voice Friday night, so I had been saying a lot of prayers to Father Abel, because I knew this was coming up, and I was like, oh my gosh. So if it sounds like I'm going through puberty, I'm not. Although, I don't know, my wife says I act like a child sometimes, so I might be going through puberty, I don't know. But yeah, Father, first I want to thank the veterans that are here. I mean, none of us would be here and have this freedom if it weren't for all of you guys. I don't think there's thanks enough. I know my dad, as she was talking earlier, how a lot of veterans don't like to talk about what they went through. My dad, I didn't know that he went in on the second day of D-Day until like 4 or 5 years before he passed away. My dad would, anytime you'd ask him about what he did in World War II, his comment was, well, we just did what we did what we had to do, and that was his philosophy. And we just went in and we did what we had to do, and he didn't see a need to talk about it. And you know, he was part of the greatest generation, but I think any veteran in any age is the greatest generation. So let's give them all a hand one more time. I would guess a lot of us already know about my uncle, Father Ray Kapaun, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time. I mean, he was to be standing in his church where he would have been on that pulpit saying mass, to just be around that feeling of where he is and who he is. And it's, you know, here I think what I loved about this place, and it's like Pilsen as well. When you walk in that church, and when you walk in this chapel, you can still feel him here. I mean, he's still here. And as Harriet knows, I would do anything as far as Pilsen and the church and to keep Father's name and Father's legacy alive. Because what he did, none of us, I mean, he was, I gave a talk yesterday at the Knights of Columbus 4th degree banquet that they had last night. And, you know, I always talk about Father. He was, you know, he grew up he was a farm boy. I mean, he was a farm boy and, you know, not far from here. And just, you know, him and my dad out in the, you know, just farming, trying to farm ground that isn't the best ground in the world. I mean, Father wasn't out there going out and milking the cows and turning milk into wine. He wasn't walking across water across the farm pond. He was an ordinary kid, but he did extraordinary things. I mean, his love and his compassion for his fellow man was extraordinary. I mean, I think the best way to describe what Father Engel stood for and how Father Engel lived his life would be when he was in the camp in North Korea, when he was captured. And, you know, and all the guys in that camp attributed their lives to Father. If it wouldn't have been for him, they all say to this very day that none of them would be alive. They would have all died in that camp. They all would have gave up. They would have said, and like a lot of them said, it was easier to die in that camp than it was to live. But Father gave them the hope to carry on, and Father gave them the hope that there was going to be a better tomorrow. But I think the best example of how Father lived his life is when he had fallen ill, he had gotten pneumonia, he had a blood clot in his leg, and the Chinese and North Koreans saw their chance to take him away from his boys, because they feared him, because as Father would call the other men in the camp were his boys. He took care of them. They were his boys. And they knew how much Father meant to them. And when they saw their chance when Father was sick, that they were going to take him out of there and they were going to take him to their so-called hospital, which was just a death house, and that's all it was. Anybody who went there never returned. I mean, they just took him there to die. And they saw their opportunity to take Father there. And as the guards came into camp to the hut to take him away, all the POWs gathered around, and all his boys weren't going to let him go. They were going to fight. They were going to fight to keep him. And Father told them to stop. He said, "You gotta stop." He said, "You gotta let me go. Nobody's going to die. No one else needs to die because of me." And then as they were taking him away, he looks at the guards who were carrying him out, carrying him to his death, and looks at him and says, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." And then the Chinese officer who tortured him and punished him and tried to convince him that the Catholic faith and his faith wasn't right and communism was the right way to go, he looks at him and says, "Please forgive me for any harm I may have done to you." I mean, to have that kind of faith, please forgive me for what I may have done to you, as he's sending him to his death. So Father's shoes are really big, and I know I'll never fit into them. I would say the best thing we can all do is follow his path and follow his footsteps. So what I'm going to do today is play a few songs. I've got a CD, and I've got a CD called Home, and I'm one of those guys. I can't write songs that I don't know and that I don't feel and that I haven't lived. You're never going to hear a song from me like, you know, driving down the road in a pickup truck with a baby by my side, because I don't have a pickup truck, so you're never going to hear that from me. So, but this CD, and my wife had always wanted me to get my songs out there and do them, and when we brought Father home, it all kind of came together and thought the timing was right. And the songs on it really do center around home. Matter of fact, the picture on the front of the CD, when I'm standing on the dirt road looking down the road, is actually the road just over that hill is where my grandparents' original farmstead was at. So it is all about home. And I'm just going to sing like a few snippets of the songs, because like I said, my voice isn't the best, and I'm going to kind of describe, you know, where the songs came from and what they mean to me. And I told Cheryl to make sure that there was no tomatoes, no rotten oranges, no... This song I am going to try to sing the whole song. I was going to do this yesterday in Pilsen, and I knew I wasn't going to be able to get through it. I knew my voice wasn't going to handle it, and I'm sure it's going to be rough on this one as well. But I've always kept trying to write songs about fathering on it. Nothing would work and nothing would come together. Nothing would sound right. And when Father came home, I thought, oh, sure, I can get one put together now. And had worked on it. And my wife she is a great sounding board for me. Anything I do and write and play, I always play it for her, just to get her input. And a lot of times I don't hear what I want to hear, you know, a typical male. But when I first wrote this song, I played it for her, and she's like, Father's not in that song. I was like, what do you mean? She goes, you can't feel Father in that song. And she kind of gave me some ideas of what to center it around. And then about an hour later, I got finished with totally redoing it and played it for her, and she was crying. So I thought, okay, it's either really bad or really good. So it's called Home at Last. Priest from a small town out on those Kansas plains, but to the soldiers who walked beside him, they would never forget his name. He was chaplain, he was father, he was just one of the guys, but to this day they still say he's the one who saved their lives. They were all brothers in that forgotten war, fighting for freedom in a land they'd never been before, dodging bullets and freezing from the cold. A lot of them were boys, their first time away from home, but they had someone who would never leave their side. And he would say, someday we'll be home. And I graduated in '76 from high school. And back in those days, I mean, there was Andale and there was Colwich, and it was like 5 miles between the two. And back in those days, there really wasn't that much to do. I mean, you're out in the country. Wichita seemed like it was to the moon and back. I mean, it seemed that far away then. But all we would do after Friday night football game, we would just drive back and forth that 5 miles between Colwich and Andale. And we'd see the same friends every time. Oh, they're in Andale, let's all go back to Andale. So I was thinking about that one evening and just was playing around the guitar and stuff, and I thought, that might be a good song. So I wrote this song called Back in Those Days, and it's just kind of reminding of what those days were like back then. Driving that car as fast as it would go, laying rubber down on those two-lane roads. We thought we were made of steel back in those days. Wouldn't listen to a word that we were told. Thought back then we would never grow old. We thought we knew everything back in those days. But that was life in a small town. Back then we swore we'd never change. If I had to do it again, wouldn't have it any other way. High school prom, driving my brother's car, trying to impress the girls with that 06-string guitar. Man, we thought we were cool back in those days. Sneaking cigarettes and beer behind the high school gym, just praying to God we wouldn't get caught again. We didn't have a clue back in those days. That was life in a small town. Back then we swore we'd never change. If I had to do it again, wouldn't have it any other way. Life has a way of changing you, life being rearranged. What was here yesterday may be long gone today. Going back now so many years down the road, those same two lanes that I drove long ago. It's good some things haven't changed like back in those days. Family and friends from time in the past, it's friendship and love that will forever last. It's good to be going home like back in those days. I don't know if I'm going to get through this whole song because it's kind of fast, and I don't know if my voice is going to hold up for it. But I don't even know if I need to explain this song because you're going to know it, what it means as soon as I start singing about it. 8 miles up on that 2-lane road, past the wheat fields, all the scuttler of gold. See the church steeple a mile away. It was the same yesterday as it is today. It's the simple things in life that'll always give you joy. I'll always be a Pilsen boy. Hard-working people all salt the earth. They've walked the same ground since the day of their birth. love of the land and soil in their blood, while they bow their heads and pray to God above. It's the simple things of life that'll always give you joy. I'll always be a Pilsen boy. No post office or a grocery store, but it's the love of each other that they never ignore. Doesn't really matter how far you roam, they're always there with open arms, welcome you home. Watch the sunset after a hard work day, doing it all again at the sun's first rays. Family and friends that are forever tied, that'll always stand the test of time. It's the simple things of life that'll always give you joy. Will always be a Pilsen boy. I'll always be a Pilsen boy. So I'm gonna finish this up with this last song. I want to dedicate it to all the veterans out there. It was a song I had been working on for a while and hadn't really finished. And I had really gotten to know the POWs that were in the camp of Bountiful. I mean, they've become really close friends with all of them, and there's so few of them left. And Bailey Gillespie, who lives in Spindale, North Carolina, I've probably gotten the closest to him, and we would talk on the phone. If he didn't call me once a week, I was calling him, and he was like a brother to me, and he was kind of like my second dad. And he'd always end every phone call. He's like, "Well, I love you, brother." And I could never answer back because I'd be in tears every time. And he passed away probably about 6 months ago, I guess now. And I hadn't heard from him for a couple of weeks, and his wife Joy had called and said, "Well, he's not doing good. He's in the VA hospital." And I could tell by her voice that it wasn't going to be good. And I had talked to my wife. I was like, maybe I should go, but I said, I'm not sure. Should I go? Should I not go? And she always does this to me every time. She's like, "Well, what would Father Engel do?" I'm like, "Yeah, I know. Father Engel would be at the airport already." So I went in there and actually took the Order of the Military Merit Award that Father got from South Korea because he hadn't seen that. And I told him I was going to bring it to him, so I spent 2 days with him there at the VA. And I knew when I left that what the next trip back was going to be. And I told his wife, Joy, that, if I fly back to Seattle and I fly back, if I get off the plane and there's a message from you that he's gone, I'll come back. And sure enough, I got home and landed in Seattle and got off the plane and he had passed. And got home and again talked to my wife. I'm like, I was just there. I'm tired. I'm wore out. And again, what would Father Engel do? And I was like, "You're right. Father would be on a plane." She's like, "No, Father Engel would have never left. He would have stayed." And so I went back for the funeral, and it was tough. When I got there, his wife Joy asked, she goes, "I know Bailey would love for you to sing a song, one of your songs at his funeral." And I was like, "Well, Joy, I don't have my guitar with me." And she's like, "Well," she goes, "Bailey had an old guitar that he played." And she said, I know he would be honored if you played that guitar. And matter of fact, she goes, "Take the guitar home with you. It's your guitar now." So the guitar is at my house now. I play it all the time. I play the old Southern gospel songs because that's what Bailey would have always played, sitting out on the porch. But this song is called "Old Soldiers," and dedicated to all the veterans, to all the POWs that were in the camp with Father, but you, Bailey. Kids just out of high school, life's barely just begun. From football games and sock hogs, now carrying a gun. But you stood strong beside your brothers, no, you never ever backed down. Now they've become those old soldiers from our hometown. From battles they wished they could never remember, to scars they wished they never wore. For war does seem to go on forever, wondering if they'd ever get home. Memories of long lost buddies, and tears for those they felt they let down. Now they've become those old soldiers from our hometown. You see them in the cafes, wearing those veterans hats strong and proud. You see them in retirement homes, all alone, no one comes around. We can't forget our soldiers, that's what this country was built on. No, we can't forget our heroes from our hometown. He sits there staring out the window, his mind's a million miles away, to battlefield in some foreign country, like it's only just yesterday. Then he sees all his old soldier buddies, all there with their arms open wide, and they say, brother, we're here to welcome you to our hometown. Brother, we're here to welcome you to your hometown. We definitely need to make sure this place stays up and going, because this is a special place, and I know you guys have done so much to this place. I mean, it's just, and I'm always going to be back here. I can guarantee you that, without a doubt, I will be here. So have a safe trip. I don't know if you want to say anything else ahead of time? Or after? Or...
Could I share something?
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. You need your help me?
I'll need to
Okay.
start anyway.
Okay.
It'll be okay. My name is Shirley McClinic from Council Grove, and in 1994, I was called of God. I literally prayed to God because I didn't know what I was going to do in regard to what has become Trolley's historic site in Council Grove. And I felt the call of God to save this place. It's an 1861 stone house. And then there were some other buildings on it. And one of those buildings was where the Harrington Army Air Base personnel who could stay off base, they stayed in those. They were built for them. And the captains and the lieutenants and such could stay there. And so if I had not been called of God to save this place and all the buildings on there, that building wouldn't be there. It had 1943 newspaper wrapped on the water pipes, which told you the year it was built. It's a duplex sort of building, and we haven't finished that building, but we're in the process of trying to get all the buildings on the property completed. We have a log house that was moved from Parkerville, and it was the Atkinson log house, and then we built a barn around it. And then we have a schoolhouse that was that we saved, and then a 1930 cabin back in the day when there were motor camps, first motels ever, and the first motel ever was in Delavan, not very far from here, in 1914. And so I just wanted to share that bit of history with you that's tied to this place. Thank you. Oh.
The Atkinson log house that we got from near Parkerville actually was built west of Latimer.
Wow. It's a log house, 1858 log house.
A lot of history.
Yeah.
A lot of history tied with the base around here. It's quite interesting. Sorry. Okay.
They remembered, the school teachers and students remembered that you said you could set your clock by an airplane that would fly over the top of that school at the same time every day when they were training for this base. And what a feeling that would be sitting in that school if your father, your uncle, your whatever relative was over there.
I wanted to say I'm a lot more comfortable with the technical and historical information. So I'm kind of our board's historian, and I have been going through Department of Defense reels on Harrington Air Force Base. So I have gone through 2 reels now of about 1,800 pages each. And so I got a lot of really interesting data and photographs that are just awesome of the military life on base. And I put those on a PowerPoint, and they are scrolling on a TV downstairs, so I thought that might be interesting to see. So when you are downstairs, we've got cookies down there, we've got coffee and tea and maybe some other drinks. I'm not sure what we've got down there. So please go downstairs and browse and watch that PowerPoint and look at Ray's CDs, pick up a CD. I thought it was awesome. The presentation his music was wonderful, very heartfelt. And enjoy the PowerPoint, and ask me any questions you have. And also up front in this room to the right, we have a copy of the original engineering plans for this building. So that was quite a find. When in the closet here, we have the original 1942 engineering plans for this chapel. I mean, is that amazing or what? So everybody wanted to see them, so what I did was I had them photocopied full size, and they are up front there, so you can browse through it and look. And there's all types of details I can tell you about this building. So if you want to ask me any questions about this building or the history, feel free to ask, and I'll let you know what I know and show you things around here. You can also browse and look. Yes.
Who actually moved the building from your base to here?
Who moved it?
Yeah.
I think I've got that written down somewhere. The son of the guy that helped pour the foundation told me, and I wrote it down. It was a contractor that moved it. Manhattan. It was a Manhattan contractor, but I wrote it down on my notes, and I really need to consolidate some of those notes that I get from the locals, because, you know, it's hard to keep all that together. There's not been a lot of alterations to this building, but there's been a few. I know we've got a lot of people, the Catholic faith here. The Needlers are still present here on this first pew, and then I think on the back pew. So that's of interest. Some of them have been taken off, but it's still nice, at least we have some of them with the Needlers on it. We have some new photos I got from the son of Chaplain John H. Eastwood, who was the first chaplain at the space, and one of them includes a 1943 photo of this chapel when it was on base. It's an excellent photo. It's very sharp, very clear, and it's on that PowerPoint downstairs. I printed off a sheet of it too. It's on our Facebook page, and it's really nice to have that photo. And he says that his father has, I think he says, thousands of photos. He was here as a chaplain, and then wasn't here too long, and he was put into a bombardment group and went overseas to Italy. So he wasn't here for too long, but this was the only stateside assignment he had, was at Harrington. So, but I'm hoping he has more. He also gave me a photo of the Army choir up in the loft here, and his father marrying a couple right here, a black couple. It's quite charming and cute because they're kissing and he's smiling. And so we're getting some good photos. I hope he has more in his collection. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed it and that you are inspired by this chapel. I think it's quite inspiring. So thank you so much, and please go downstairs or browse the history room or anywhere else. And thank you, Ray. It was very good. I really appreciate it.